if you feel like your deals are stalling or you can't get them across the finish line, or maybe you just can't even create momentum in the first place, this video is going to be really valuable because I'm going to walk you through a simple shift in how to think about your discovery, how you position yourself and your solution to not only create more momentum in your deals, but even more importantly, maintain the momentum so that you can get it across the finish line. And the thing you have to understand, and I've learned this from being involved with thousands of software sales cycles myself, both as an IC and as a 5-time sales leader, this is a very simple shift. It's not a big shift, but it comes down to understanding how humans are wired. So if you think about how we're wired from back in the day, because we have brains that are tens of thousands and some would even argue millions of years old. So think about the caveman days where every day it's fight or flight. You literally might die every single day. So your brain is wired to look for things that are wrong. Okay, so think about that. Now I'll give you a little story. So imagine you're a kid and your parents don't want you to put your hands on your stove because it's hot. So there's two scenarios I'm going to give you. Number one, they say, hey, Susie, you keep your hand off the stove. And if you don't put your hand on the stove, I'm going to give you a lollipop. The other scenario is you put your hand in your stove and it gets burned and you quickly realize, never do that again, right? Which one's going to move the needle the most for you? For most of you, if not all of you, it's going to be burning yourself because that's how your brain is wired. When we feel pain, it psychologically wires us faster than pleasure because everyone in the world is either running towards pleasure or running away from pain. So now that you understand that, think about how we apply this to the deals. So what most reps do, in software sales is they focus on something called ROI, otherwise known as return on investment, which essentially means if for every dollar that I give you, I'm going to get more than $1 in return, right? So what I want you to think about, the way this is psychologically going to be wired into how someone processes that is this is going to be upside or pleasure, otherwise known as gain, okay? So when you think about this, is like upside, right? Versus the other side of the coin, this is where a lot of reps miss the mark, and this is the shift. And they focus on something called COI. And the COI stands for cost of inaction. Now, let me explain the differences. And the first thing I want you to pay attention to is think about the language. This says return. This says cost. Think about that. Return, I'm getting. Cost, I'm losing. And you remember from the story a second ago, people are more wired to run away from pain versus towards pleasure. So, and because this is very pain oriented, think about this, how you weave this into your discovery. I'm going to ask you two questions. It's a similar question, but I'm going to ask it from ROI versus COI. ROI says, hey, Mr. Sales Leader, what's the benefits of you getting a training program and system in place for your sales organization? That's upside, that's pain. Same thing saying, hey, Mr. Sales Leader, what happens if you don't get a system and sales training program in place for your team? Notice how I'm asking something similar, but it's two very different ways. So what I want you to do is think about the discovery questions that you're asking. And are you only focusing on ROI? Or are you also making sure you include COI, the cost of an action? Because the ROI is a great way to help uncover what they're thinking about, the return on investment, but building in the cost of an action is a great way to magnify the gap, magnify the pain of them not doing anything. Because many of you know, but if you don't, the number one reason why deals don't get done is the cost of staying the same doesn't outweigh the cost of change. So I'll say that again. The cost of staying the same is less than the cost of change. Because if they're going to implement a solution, change a process, whatever it is, there's a cost associated to it. It's not just money, it's time, energy, resources. So the cost of inaction, the cost of staying the same has to be greater than the cost of change if I'm going to take action. So I want you to think about your discovery questions. Make sure you're building in both sides of the equation. And then pro tip, think about the person that you're speaking to. if they are more conservative by nature, they're definitely going to lean more on this side of the equation. Versus if there's someone who's a trendsetter, someone that's trying to stay on the cutting edge, right? They're going to be leaning towards above the line, right? So that's what I want you to think about. So implement, making sure you have COI and ROI in your discovery and your evaluations that can help you build momentum and create momentum in your deal so you can get them across the finish line.